The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus went up the mountain, and he began to teach his disciples, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom. But whoever does them and teach them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." The Gospel of the Lord. Today's readings center on obedience to the law. So we begin with the first reading from Deuteronomy chapter 4, and the law is pretty clear. It's the 10 Commandments that Moses, when he went up Mount Sinai, received, and the entire Torah. Those are clearly set out. They were etched in stone, given to the people. The problem, though, is those laws, clear as they were, did not contain within them the grace, the power for the people to keep it, nor could it forgive sins, nor cleanse the conscience of those who did. And so the law really acted more as a tutor, a teacher, helping people once again to understand who God is and what God desires. Because that was very clouded after the original sin that affected the intellect, which was darkened. People fell into a real ignorance about who God is, even the natural law. Well, that was clearly set forth again now in the commandments, as we hear in the first reading. In the gospel, though, Jesus now perfects this law. He doesn't negate it, the moral law, in any way, but he wants to fulfill it in himself. So Christ now is the law, but in a much deeper way. And this is the Sermon on the Mount that we heard in today's Gospel from Matthew chapter 5. Jesus now goes up the mountain as the new Moses. He doesn't just receive the law, he is the law. But he's now giving the law in such a way that it's more spiritual, penetrating to the heart. And so now, without negating the external commands, Jesus wants to bring them into the attitudes, the motives, the desires of people, right into the heart. That's why he says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill." And then he gives various examples about how the old law said, "Don't commit adultery," but I say to you, don't look even lustfully at another. So there's the heart. Well, let's take this as an example. That's the 8th commandment: do not bear false witness against a neighbor. If we look at the Catechism, it has a section interpreting that commandment, and it goes into the more deeper aspects of the motives, the desires of the heart, as it affects our ability to carry out that commandment. And so it says, don't commit perjury or lie, but to go deeper into your heart, don't even have rash judgment, which is, you assume as true without foundation the moral faults of another. Detraction, disclosing the faults of another without justification. Calumny, harming the reputation of another. Gossip, all of these things that are so easy to slide into given our very contentious culture bring us right into the heart of that commandment. It's not just perjury in a court of law, it's how we interact with our neighbor at the deepest level of the heart. Now, why does Jesus do this? Because of what the first reading said in Deuteronomy, God speaking. I now teach you statutes and ordinances. Observe them diligently, for this will show your wisdom and discernment to the peoples, who, when they hear will say, "Surely this great nation is a wise and discerning people." In other words, the witness value, when we are able to keep the deeper issues of the heart when it comes to the way we treat our neighbor, that's what's at stake. Because when we refrain from gossip, from tearing down, from rash judgment, and all the rest, then we become a people who really do glorify God and who invite others into the community. We have charity at the deepest level of who we are. That's what Jesus is trying to teach on this Wednesday of the third week of Lent. So it's a good opportunity for us today to examine our conscience and see how are we doing as respect this very, very important teaching, and in particular the eighth commandment. Let us turn to God and ask for grace that we may conform ourselves more truly to the deepest aspects of the law, which is, after all, Christ.